check the recording. So अब recording भी शुरू हो गई. I think we can start with, and we'll try to finish both today. Okay, fine, students, go ahead.
Good morning. Today my group will give a presentation on the topic components of biodiversity. Next slide, please. So I would like to start with the basic introduction. The term biodiversity refers to the variety of living organisms. Biodiversity or biological diversity is the variation of taxonomic life forms within a given ecosystem, biome, or for the entire Earth. Biodiversity refers to variety and variability among all groups of living organisms and the ecosystem complexes in which they occur. Traditionally, there are three levels of biodiversity: genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. But what does each of these levels really mean? So I'm going to hand it over to Kshitij so he can continue with the second slide.
There are three types of biodiversity: genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. In genetic diversity, it is the variety of genes or inheritable characteristics that are present in the population. There in the climate stability, it is first point is that is resources uses. Second is stability of biomass production. Third is inspiration for innovation. Fourth is food security, in which the dismemberment of anthesis and evolution of the crop performance relative to specific time. Extreme temperature events will contribute to how crop resilience to climate change can be achieved. Third is medicine, maintenance, phylogenetic, hence genetic diversity retains its opportunities for pharmaceutical industry. Fourth is healthy soils, in which genetic variation in plant species feed soil microorganism through decomposition. It release back into the soil to the number of nutrients, which create an environment for rich plant growth. In species diversity, it is the number and relative evidence of species found in a given uh, biological organization in population, ecosystem, and earth. The species population of the particular location is called species richness. It is important for many reasons like economic, biological, social, and culture. The greater species diversity ensures natural sustainability for all life forms. In ecosystem diversity, it is a variety of the different communities, habitats, and ecological process. And there will be more conflicts over territory of water, the and the establishment of the forest or any acceptable environment for so many different uh, different regions. In ecosystem diversity, it is a variety of different habitats, communities, and ecological process. Excess of wild animals can harm the humans, uh, or they can harm each other. There will be next. I hand over to Shakti.
Good morning, everyone. So I'll be talking about genetic diversity. So as we all know, genetic means related to traits passed from parent to offsprings. And diversity, that means having a range of different things. So basically, genetic diversity is the diversity or variability within species or community. Like every individual is unique because of their distinctive genes. Suppose like, for example, every human is unique in their physical appearance. Like we all have similar appearance, but we all are unique in our own ways. That is because of our genetic individuality. Like we all have two eyes and like two hands that we are having very similar appearance, but still we all are very unique. And the term genetic diversity also covers distinct populations of a single species, such as the thousands of breed of different dogs and the numerous variety of roses. Next slide. So here I have listed some genetic diversity examples. So first is different breeds of dogs. Like you have heard about different breeds of dog like Siberian Huskies and Golden Retriever. Dogs are selectively bred to get the desired traits, and that we can only do when we know about the genetic diversity and when we have enough knowledge about the genes that are present and what desired genes and traits we want. So then only we can selectively breed them. Different variety of rose, flower, wheat, etc. There are more than 50,000 varieties of rice and more than 1,000 varieties of mangoes found in India. So that is how the genetic diversity and genetic variability works. Different varieties of medicinal plant Wolfia vomitoria present in different Himalayan ranges differ in the amount of chemical ricin produced by them. So it is basically a medicinal plant, but um, the amount of chemical produced by them differs according to the Himalayan range they are present in. So that is again due to genetic diversity. Next slide, please. So yes, we have talked about the definition and the examples. Now, what is the importance of this genetic diversity? Why is it important? So genetic diversity is important because it could ensure that certain groups of individual species or population will be able to adapt to certain environmental factors. So suppose just like in previous slide I talked about Siberian Huskies, so they have the ability to live in the extreme cold climates. So if we have different genetic diversities, then we can ensure that some species can be adopt to certain environment factors, like some can live in extreme hot regions, some can live in colder regions. Genetic diversity is also important for a healthy population by maintaining different varieties of genes that might be resistant to pest, disease, or other conditions. So if we are having good genetic diversity, then we can also be ensured that we have some varieties of genes that can be resistant to pests or diseases, and then we can use it in our favor. New varieties of plants can be grown by crossbreeding different genetic variants and produce plants with desirable traits like disease resistant, increased tolerance or to stress. Like you must have heard about BT cotton. So it is a genetic modified crop. So we can get the knowledge that how we can use these genes in our favor to make the plants or the animals, or especially plants, disease resistance, or we can increase their tolerance to stress. Genetic diversity also reduces the reoccurrence of the undesirable inherited traits. So if we continue to breed the beneficial traits of the plants or animals, then it can also reduce the recurrence of undesirable traits after a certain period of time. So that's all. Now I hand it over to Rupal for species diversity. Thank you.
So next is the species diversity. It is the number of species that occur in an ecosystem. So the factors affecting the species diversity, they are extinction, migration, speciation, immigration, and emigration. And the tropical region, they have the highest species diversity and decline as we move towards the pole. So the hottest spot for species diversity, it is the tropical rainforest. Next slide, please. Next slide, it is the types of species. So first is the endemic species. These are the plants and animals that exist only in one area. Next is the exotic species. These are the animals that are introduced only to an area or ecosystem by migration or for business. And some of the examples are horses, goat, pig, and there are some edible plants like wheat and oat. And next is the cosmopolitan species. So these are the species that can be found almost anywhere on the earth. Next slide. Next is the influences. So first is the species richness. So there are a number of species that live in a particular area. For example, we have two areas of land, A and B. And area A has 84 species of plant, while area B only has 15 species of plant. Then area A has a higher species richness. Next is the evenness, or we can say that relative abundance. So it is the it is the number of people or individual of each species. It is highest when all the species in a sample, they have the same abundance. Now I forward it to Sahiba.
Ecosystem diversity. Ecosystem diversity refers to the variety of ecosystems by their nature and number, where living species interact with their environment and with each other. For example, on Earth, there are different ecosystems, each with their specificities and deserts, oceans, lakes, forests, and even within these ecosystems, there are special details like hot or cold desert, boreal or tropical forest, warm or cold water coastal regions. Each ecosystem has its own species and ways of functioning. Ecosystem diversity has a great deal on both genetic and species diversity, thus, it is coined as the largest scale of biodiversity. Next slide, please. It describes the assemblage and interaction of species living together and the physical environment of a given area. It relates varieties of habitats, biotic communities, ecological processes in biosphere. It also tells about the diversity within the ecosystem. The ecosystem diversity is due to diversity of niches, topic levels, ecological processes like nutrient cycling, food webs, energy flow, role of dominant species, and various related biotic interactions. Such type of diversity can generate more productive and stable ecosystems or communities capable of tolerating various types of stresses, example drought and flood. Grasslands, deserts, rainforest, terrestrial and marine ecosystems are some example of ecosystem, and they are diverse and contribute a lot to creating a well balanced environment. Now I would like to hand it over to Janvi.
Thank you, Saiba. Next slide, please. Okay, so as Saiba has mentioned, now I would like to continue with the importance of ecosystem diversity. Saiba has mentioned that it is the variation in the ecosystem found in a region or the variation in ecosystem over the whole planet. A diverse environment can constantly hold environment consequences. When a complex ecosystem is highly affected by the activities of human and other environmental problems, there could be still a chance that the interaction among organisms can continue to exist despite the impact. Humans are changing the original structure of ecological communities by various activities that increase the rates of species extinction and invasions locally and globally. These modifications in Earth's ecological communities cause a compelling concern for ecosystem diversity loss. The ecosystem's diversity loss may be man-made or naturally included that can greatly affect the environment. Now I would like to hand over to Tridib.
Good morning. So basically, the topic I am covering is importance of biodiversity. So biodiversity is a significant is significant for the well-being of the planet. Most of the cultures, at least for some period of time, they recognize the importance of conserving the natural resources. Many still do, but many do not. Importance of biodiversity can be classified uh, on various things like ecological biodiversity, then biodiversity, economic importance, and social importance, and ethical importance, and scientific importance. Next slide, please. Ecological importance of biodiversity. Uh, it has 7 points basically, 8 points basically, and starting from controlling of soil erosion. Soil soil organisms provide resistance to erosion by improving the entry and storage of water, which holds soil and roots. Improving of soil quality, healthy biodiversity will increase the resilience of the soil to environmental challenges. The biological, physical, and chemical aspects of soil must be in balance. Good soil encourages good agriculture. Formation of healthy ecosystem. Then biodiversity is important to maintain a healthy ecosystem that supplies oxygen, clean air and water, pollution of plants, pest control, wastewater treatment, and many ecosystem services. Then coming to protection of species in ecosystem. Biodiversity helps in improving a healthy ecosystem, where all forms of species can survive and grow. A large and significant number of plant species can provide a variety of crops. A wide variety of species ensures a smooth implementation of natural processes for a sustainable ecosystem. It also helps in protecting endangered species and their habitats. 5 is pollution management. Biodiversity plays a vital role in controlling pollution. As the trees and other vegetation absorbs pollutants such as excessive nitrogen dioxide and ozone and particulate matter, it thereby helps to improve the air quality. Nutrient cycling. Biodiversity plays a significant role in recycling nutrients. Uh, Sam, the previous slide only. For example, plants take nutrients from the soil and air, and these nutrients can then form the basis of food chains, which is used by a wide range of life forms. Then, Sam, next slide. Coming to the one second. Coming to the economic importance of biodiversity, sources of food. Biodiversity is important to provide food for the living organisms in these ecosystems. Agriculture is a source that provides good food for human beings, trees, and plants to animals. Sources of fuel. Biodiversity helps in getting fossil fuels, petrol, natural gases. It also helps in sustainable growth of wood by increasing forest, which is common forms of wood fuel used in day-to-day life. Protection of natural resources. High biodiversity is rich in biological wealth. It is also an indicator of high levels of natural resources. It ensures clean air, water, fertile soil, and a healthy ecosystem. Development of medicine. Our scientists have developed many medicines through plants and other living organisms found in the ecosystem, which has helped to make medicines for many incurable diseases. Economic growth and poverty reduction. Rich biodiversity is vital for economic growth and poverty reduction. Biodiversity is a chief source of raw materials for the industries, and food and herbs play an essential role in development of economic. Sources of tourism. Biodiversity plays important initial essential role in the development of tourism. It creates a natural tourism attraction such as wildlife watching, scuba diving, trekking, hiking, bird watching, and camping. Next slide. There are three other importance, like social importance of biodiversity. Biodiversity plays a crucial role to provide social benefits such as improved employment and the social services provide for vulnerable rural people for their development. Next is the ethical importance of biodiversity. Healthy biodiversity has the ethical importance of protecting all forms of life. All living all living beings have the right to exist on earth. Mortality and ethics teach us not to harm any organism unnecessarily. But unfortunately, some people take the pleasure in hunting animals. Next is scientific importance of biodiversity. The scientific importance of biodiversity is to perform experiments and research on plants and genes of organisms to make new crops and medicines. It also helps scientists to find clues about the evolution of life in certain species. Humans use scientific research on different species and plants to develop their knowledge. It represents systematic ecological data that helps us to understand the natural world and its origins. Next, I hand over to my teammates.
Okay, so now as Tridev has mentioned the importance of biodiversity, I would like to talk about the threats to biodiversity. Here I'm mentioning six main threats to biodiversity and also few solutions that we can look into. Next slide, please. Okay, so six major threats to biodiversity are habitat loss and deforestation, climate change, overexploitation of resources, nutrients loading, environmental pollution, and invasive species. So for loss and deforestation, deforestation and other anthropogenic activities are leading to unhealthy and unbalanced ecosystem that result in the loss of biodiversity and extinction. The reason behind one of them could be implementation of laws. So the solution for this can be awareness creation. Awareness creation should be done. Governments and regulatory agencies should also take the lead in ensuring the enactment of stronger forest protection laws and policies. The next we have climate change. So global temperature continues to change drastically. We all know about that, and so threats to biodiversity will continue to expand as ecosystems and species will not be able to adapt. So what could be the solution? Individuals, organizations, and industries may need to reduce their carbon footprints, and they should equally participate in awareness creation. Cities and international government can also charge for carbon emissions and enact policies that curtail activities which destroy the carbon sinks. Next, we have overexploitation of resources. So, as we all know, rising human population leads to high demand of these things, have resulted in overfishing, overhunting, overharvesting, and excessive mineral resources extraction, which has highly contributed to biodiversity loss. Solution could be main strategies should be on awareness creation and conservation. Government and environmental protection agencies need to strict towards the implementation of laws. Individual efforts should aim towards being mindful of the products we consume and buy. For nutrient loading, as we all know, nutrient exists naturally in all ecosystems. Now are depleting due to use of artificial fertilizer and reactive nitrogen and phosphorus, which leads to ecological imbalance over time. The solutions are to meet the global food demand. Alternate of artificial fertilizers should be aimed for the long-term effect. Harvesting is need to encourage nutrient recycling. While for environmental pollution, pollution has continued to harm the biosphere by releasing and depositing toxic chemicals into the atmospheric, terrestrial, and marine system, such that oil spills or the consumption of plastic and other toxic substances are being the cause of death of many species. For solution, laws and policies should be strict so everyone follow the rule manually. Individually, number of measures you can take at your home. You should stop using polybags, etc. Awareness creation and advocacy is all well essential. Now, the last one is invasive species. So, as we all know, they are non-native species and that invade normal and upset the native biota, thereby causing extinctions and massive threats to biodiversity. The solutions could be local authorities and states need to establish systems to manage and prevent invasive alien species. International bodies and scientists can assist in research and information quantification by using more creative means. Now, I would like to hand over to Vanshika for conservation of biodiversity.
Thank you, Janvi. So, the conservation of biodiversity. Conservation refers to the management of human activities in the environment so that that does not lead to habitual destruction and loss of biodiversity. The Convention on Biological Diversity was held in June 1992 and stressed the need of the conservation of biodiversity for sustainable development and perpetuation of human beings on Earth. Sam, next slide, please. So first is to preserve and protect the species. Sorry, the last one. So to preserve and protect the species of their habitat and to maintain the essential ecological processes so that there is no ecological imbalance created. Next slide, please. So to use the species and ecosystem sustainably without exploiting them, the creation of the national parks, sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, etc., preserve the flora and the fauna, conservation of the genetic biodiversity by establishing zoos, botanical gardens, nurseries, etc., the proper planning of land use and other natural resources affecting the biodiversity by prohibiting of hunting, poaching of animals, fishing, etc., beyond the productive capacity of ecosystem. And the two basic approaches to wildlife conservation in protected habitats are in situ conservation and the ex situ conservation. And next slide. Yeah, so first one is the in situ conservation. It simply means the conservation of a species in its natural ecosystem or even in man-made ecosystem. This strategy emphasizes protection of total ecosystem through a network of protected areas, and the protected areas are land or sea, especially dedicated to the protection and the maintenance of biological diversity and managed through legal effective means. Then there are different categories of protected areas which are managed without different objectives. Those include biosphere reserves, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, etc. And at present, we have 11 major biosphere reserves, 80 national parks, 420 wildlife sanctuaries in our country, covering 4% of the geographic area. The Corbett National Park was first national park established in India. Next slide. The last one is the ex situ conservation. It is defined as the conservation of component of a biological diversity, the sample of a genetic diversity, particularly of an endangered species and outside their natural habitats. It involves maintenance and breeding of endangered plants and animal species under partially or wholly controlled conditions. For example, zoos, botanical gardens, aquaria, nurseries, DNA bank, seed bank, gene bank, etc. Then there are more than 1,500 botanical gardens in the world containing more than 80,000 species. There are more than 800 zoos around the world with about 3,000 species of mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians. In India, we have many gene banks. The important ones are the National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources, agricultural and horticultural crops, and their wild varieties are preserved by cryopreservation of seeds. The National Facility for Plant Tissues Culture Repository. It has been set up for the development of a facility of a conservation of varieties of crop plants, trees by tissue culture. Yeah.
Hello. Go ahead, go ahead.
So this was the end of the presentation.
Okay, fantastic. I think excellent. Truly speaking, I learned so many things about biodiversity. I have not done thorough references because I was never expert. As beginning, also I told that Dr. Vanita is to take this topic. But it was so lovely to listen to the whole presentation, and even like equivalent, like all of you are so well presenting. I felt that your understanding, which I judge before, this should have been done in earlier classes. Then I would have taught you more detail. I realize that your understanding of the subject overall last presentation and this presentation, what I see, that the whole class basic understanding is very good, and your presentation skills are excellent. And as you will go ahead, the presentation skills are going to really help you. So I'm sure, like, I would also say that let's all clap for this group. Yeah. Not all 16, 17 people. I'm sure that we all have learned a lot from this, isn't it? So I would thank you for this. And I think then we'll go to, because you all want to do it, the second presentation also. Who's his next class after this? I can ring them up and tell them to postpone it.
Sir, we don't have a class for the next 2 hours.
Oh, excellent. Then let's go ahead. I think that's the next presenter. Okay, before I go there, for all three group, I need all these slides also. The first group, this today's, both the group. Please send me the slide set so that when I deposit with this recording, they might need a physical slides also. So I'll take a printout and deposit it. Okay. So by evening, please try to send me. बहुत अच्छी स्किल है आप लोगों की presentation skills, तो मैंने really master किया हुआ आप लोगों ने. Very good. Okay, and now let's learn about biofuel. Though I have tried to teach you, I'm sure I'll have much more to learn from this. So let's, I'm listening. Platform is to you all.
Okay, good morning, sir. Our topic was on biofuel, and we were to explain biodiesel, its 3 generations, as well as the advantages and disadvantages they present. Sam, next slide. So just providing an introduction to what biofuels are. Basically, biofuels are those fuels which are produced through contemporary processes from biomass rather than the slow geological processes we see, which involve the formation of fossil fuels. An example, a basic example of that could be oil. Now, since biomass, it can technically be used as a fuel, some people use the terms biomass and biofuel interchangeably. Now, generally, the word biomass, it just simply means the biological raw material that the fuel is made of, and or some form of the thermally or chemically altered solid end product, like any torrefied pellets or briquettes. Now, the word biofuel, it's usually reserved for liquid or gaseous fuels, which are used in transportation. And they basically they require no engine modification of the vehicle. Now, a biofuel, it can be produced from plants or from agricultural, commercial, domestic, or industrial wastes. For industrial wastes, we just have to make sure that the waste has a certain biological origin. Now, biofuels they generally involve carbon fixation, such as those which occur in plants through the process of photosynthesis. And the greenhouse gas mitigation potential of biofuel, it changes, it varies depending, and it varies from emission levels comparable to fossil fuels in some scenarios to negative emission in others. And the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it defines bioenergy as a renewable form of energy. Now, there are two most common types of biofuel, which are bioethanol and biodiesel. Bioethanol is basically just an alcohol made by fermentation, majorly from carbohydrates which are produced in sugar or starch crops, such as you can take corn or sugarcane. And ethanol, it can be used as a fuel for vehicles in its pure form, but it's generally used as a gasoline additive to increase octane and improve vehicle emissions. And bioethanol, it's majorly used in countries like the United States and in Brazil. Now, the other common type of biofuel is biodiesel, which is basically produced from oils or fats using transesterification, and it's most commonly used in Europe. It can possibly be used for fuel in vehicles as well in its purest form, but it's generally used as a diesel additive to reduce levels of particulates, carbon monoxide, and hydrocarbons from any diesel-powered vehicles. And as you'll see in the next slides, we have 3 generations of biofuels. Now I'll hand over to Adish.
Okay. The major generations of biofuel lies like we have the first generation, we have the second generation, and we have the third generation. First generation are biofuels which are made from edible biomass like oil cakes, food staples, and oil seeds. So, and these are all made on arable land. So the crops waste contains like sugar, starch, and these are converted into ethanol using the transesterification or by also through yeast fermentation. Now, first generation biofuels, these are also known as the conventional biofuels, as they go through the well-known processes like distillation and fermentation. So what happens is sugar and starches are fermented to produce primary ethanol, and then in smaller quantities, butanol and propanol. Biodiesel is also another first generation biofuel and is produced when plant oil or animal fat goes through transesterification. The second generation usually lies when we obtain our biofuel from non-arable lands and non-edible food sources. And third generation lies through algal fields. But in first generation biofuel is usually sustainable only if we recycle our oil. For example, I would like to support this by saying the food outlets, the restaurants, after they cook the burnt oil, that can be sent to plants in order to convert it for biodiesel for transesterification. But if we take factory-made virgin oil instead of those oils, it would be it won't do its purpose basically. Okay, Sam, next slide.
Good morning, everyone. This is Yuvraj Nigam, and here I've brought a slide with the first generation of a biofuel, which says about the different sources and how it plays an important role in providing and generating a new biofuels and how the process takes place and along with the advantages and disadvantages. So just like how Adish has mentioned, that there are like starch, sugar, and vegetable oils. It's important to know that the structure of biofuel itself doesn't change, but intergenerations, but the source from which the fuel is derived, they brings a change. So the basic sources which derive the biofuels are corn, sugarcane, soybean, and vegetable oil. So while looking into the corn is a world's most primary fuel for an ethanol, and it produces the most of the corn in the United States. Along with the, it plays a major role in production of ethanol, and it acts as a renewable fuel in standard. Along with this, the advantages of corn are it is very simple to convert into the corn starch to ethanol, and it has a great infrastructure for planting, harvesting, processing, and it has the potential to use the rest of the plant to produce ethanol. It contains some of the disadvantages because it is a daily using crop, and it is a food staple. And using biofuel has increased food prices worldwide and sometimes lead to a famine. The other disadvantage comes is the production rate low and about 50 per hectare. Next is the sugarcane. Sugarcane is nothing far behind corn in terms of ethanol production in sugarcane, but the majority of the world's sugarcane is grown in Brazil. Along with this, what the source it provides it provides a sugar, whereas the corn it provides a starch and lead to the conversion of a biofuel. So here the sugarcane converted into fuel. The difference come between the corn and sugarcane is the corn undergoes heating and the fermentation process, whereas sugarcane only requires the fermentation process to convert it into a biofuel. Its advantages includes that there is no land use change to provide any plantation size, and it remains stable. Along with the yield is higher corn at an average of 650 gallons per hectare. The disadvantages comes with high yield than corn. It is still relatively low when we compare corn. Also, it is only suitable to the few regions for a cultivation. The soybean, we know it is one of the most nutritious substance we use in our daily life, and we contribute in our regular diet. The soybean also play some role in the production of a biofuel, and it acts as a biodiesel as well. But it also has some advantages, like it can grow in many regions and it is easy to maintain. But while looking into its disadvantages, its soybean is a quite common food source, and because of this, it threatens the food chain, and also it faces a number of disease and pest burdens because the pest can easily attack on it and extract all its nutrition, which ultimately destroy the production. The next is the vegetable oil. It is the specialty of the vegetable oil is that it comes in first generation and second generation. But while looking into the first generation, it is used only after it is cooked. So this vegetable oil further act as a biofuel or a biodiesel in commercial process. So the advantages it includes are that it is easy to convert it into biodiesel, and it is widely available. It might be sometimes give a low expensiveness. Along with this, it can often be used to directly in a diesel engine with quite little modification. Also, the disadvantages it gains that is, it can cause engine damage through carbon decomposition due to the incomplete conversion. So this is why we require a slight modification in order to use in a successful way. The other disadvantage uses the replacement of old growth of a forest with the oil palms increases carbon emission and damages biodiversity. So this is what the advantages and disadvantages of different resources of biofuels. But now I'll over to my next presentation to Ishita.
Next slide, please. Second generation biofuels. So the second generation biofuels are also known as the advanced biofuels, and they are the biofuels which are composed of non-food biomass, that is the feedstock which is used in the production of second generation biofuels. Second generation biofuels are mainly the non-food types, as we already know, already 10, and it is mainly composed of lignocellulosic mass. When the food crops are of no use in terms of food and nutrition, when they doesn't act as a food, then they can be used in the production of second generation biofuels. Second generation biofuels are mainly composed of materials which are rich in lignocellulose and which are not suitable for human consumption, basically which cannot provide us any kind of nutrition and cannot fulfill our food values. Waste vegetable oils are also used as second generation biofuels. Different techniques are used to derive these products so that they can provide energy, or some of them can be directly used to create energy. Different techniques are used, we have combustion, gasification, pyrolysis, fermentation. But in some cases, these products can be used directly to get energy out of them, like when the switch glass or the straws are burned, then they produce heat and light, which can be used as energy in some cases. Techniques used in second generation differs from the techniques which we use in first generation to extract the biofuels. These techniques are generally divided into two types: the thermochemical techniques and the biochemical techniques. Thermochemical techniques are of three types, which are combustion, gasification, and pyrolysis. Combustion gasification mainly depends on heat. The process of heat is involved in it, by which electricity is then produced. And in pyrolysis, the oils are being extracted with the help of this process. And in biochemical conversion, fermentation is done, via which bioethanol is extracted. Next slide. Next slide. Fine. Feedstock of second generation. In second generation, there are different feedstocks which are used and which are basically rich in cellulosic material like straws, wood, energy, and different energy crops. They are mainly green waste, energy crops, waste vegetable oils, jatropha, and other different seed crops which can be used to extract different energies. Municipal solid waste. Green waste are the biodegradable waste which are collected from the parks, forests. They are like the leaves and the different dead parts of the plant which are not of any use, which are basically not the dead ones but have little bit amount of nutrition. With the help of different techniques like gasification, they are then used to produce fuel. Energy crops. Energy crops are the crops which are rich in cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin, which in terms provides us energy. These crops, when treated with second generation techniques, different techniques which we use in second generation, then with the help of that techniques, we can extract different biofuels from them. Example, wheat and straw. Waste vegetable oils. Waste vegetable oils are one of the main feedstock which are used to produce energy. These waste vegetable oils are used as fuels directly, and they can also be used when they can also be used by with the help of other techniques which we can use, like extract by after extraction, as their utility as food, as the food has been finished, or which we cannot expand, we cannot use them as food, then they are used to provide energy when recycled, and will also help in the environment preservation. Jatropha and other seed crops, the marginal land crops, grown crops used in biofuels production, and other seed crops are used to extract biofuels out of them. Municipal solid waste. Municipal solid waste basically consists of human waste, grasses, and some of the kitchen waste that few people used to expose or dump out. These wastes are then collected, and then different techniques like gasification is used to produce biofuels like biogas, which provides when burned, and it can also act as fuel. So in vegetable, as we have studied about the waste vegetable oils, the waste vegetable oils are also considered as second generation fuel, because in these there is no harm, they don't cause any harm to our nature environment, and are readily available, they are easily available to us. Now I hand over to Shivani. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, my team got hanged.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. No problem. Go ahead.
Okay. So different types of second generation biofuels are grasses, waste vegetable oil, seed crops, and municipal waste, which have their own advantages and disadvantages. Example, waste vegetable oil. Waste advantages includes waste vegetable oil has no food value, helps to reduce environmental pollution. Some diesel engines are designed in such a way that obtained biofuels from this biomass is directly can directly be used without blending or refining. It doesn't release sulfur to environment. It is used as it is a basically a used product, and it doesn't perturb the arable crop. Besides, its cost nothing in use of land. Disadvantages includes this biomass can damage diesel engines if not purified accurately before use. It is difficult to collect because it is located in many points. Second one is grass. Advantages include grass need to be planted only once as it is permanent. Biomass grows every Biomass grows very quickly on marginal lands, and yields of crops are obtained in number of times a year. Less fertilizers are required for cultivation and can be used instantly without further processing as biomass. Disadvantages includes use of direct biomass sometimes comes good, and then grasses turning into biodiesels are not favorable. Process to turn grasses into alcohol is quite complicated. None can make crops to be dense enough within first few years. Substantial humidity levels largely suit in their growing, and they can't be grown on arid soil. While they are easy to plant, their seedlings should be constantly secured from much stronger species of weeds naturally grown around. Now I hand over to Devanshi.
Thank you, Shivani. Next slide, please. Third generation biofuels. They are fuels that are produced from algal biomass, which has a very distinct growth yield, which results in low input and high yield feedstock. Around 30 to 100 times more energy production takes place and comparable it effective. Some fuels that can be derived from algae includes biodiesels, butanol, gasoline, methane, ethanol, vegetable oil, and jet fuel. Production of biofuels from algae usually relies on the lipid content of the organisms. When it comes to the potential to produce fuel, no feedstock can match algae in terms of quantity or diversity. The diversity of the fuel that algae can produce results from two characteristics of the microorganisms. First can be algae produce an oil that can easily be refined into diesel or even certain components of gasoline. Second, it can be genetically manipulated to produce everything from ethanol and butanol to even gasoline and diesel fuel directly. Usually, species such as chlorella are targeted because of their high lipid content and their high productivity. Algae are known to produce biomass faster and on reduced land surfaces. It can be its plus point. Butanol is one of great interest because the alcohol is exceptionally similar to gasoline. In fact, it has a nearly identical energy density to gasoline and an improved emissions profile. Algae have been used to produce up to 9,000 gallons of biofuels per acre, which is tenfold what the best traditional feedstock have been able to generate. So how can we cultivate algae? Algae has some favorable property in respect to its own cultivation. First method can be open ponds. These are the simplest system in which algae is grown in pond in the open air. They are simple and have low capital cost but are less efficient than other systems. They are also of concern because other organisms can maybe contaminate the pond and potentially damage or kill the algae. Second method can be closed loop system. These are similar to open ponds, but they are not exposed to the atmosphere and use a certain sterile source of carbon dioxide. Such systems have potential because they may be able to be directly connected to carbon dioxide sources. If we take examples such as smokestacks, and thus use the gas before it is everly released into the atmosphere. Third method can be photobioreactors. These are the most advanced and also most difficult system to implement, also result in high capital cost. Their advantages in terms of yield and control, however, are unparalleled. They are also closed systems. But also, it is not compulsory that algae can grow anywhere. For these three ways mean that algae are able to grow almost anywhere that temperature are warm enough. This means that no farmland needed to be threatened by algae. Closed loop and photobioreactor systems have even been used in desert settings also. Also, algae can be grown in wastewater, which means that they can help to digest municipal waste while avoiding taking up any additional land. Also, the biomass left over from oil processing can be used for animal feeding and ethanol production. Processing biofuel from algae can capture large amount of carbon dioxide. They are relatively easy to grow, but the algal oil is hard and expensive to extract because the production cost is very high because of the energy required to circulate gases and other materials inside the photobioreactors where the algae grow. It also takes energy to dry out the biomass. Now I will hand over to the Nehal.
Thank you, Devanshi. Sam, next slide. Yeah. So what are the pros and cons of third generation biofuels? So the requirement of energy for the mankind is increasing day by day. The major source of energy is based on fossil fuels only. Thus, the scarcity of fossil fuels, rising price of petroleum-based fuels, energy production, and increased global warming result in focusing on renewable energy sources such as solar, wind, hydro, tidal, and biomass worldwide. Recently, researchers and entrepreneurs have focused their interest especially on the algal biomass as the alternative feedstock for the production of biofuels. The photosynthetic microorganisms like microalgae require mainly light, carbon dioxide, and some nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium for its growth, and to produce large amount of lipids and carbohydrates, which can be further processed into different biofuels and other valuable co-products. The low content of hemicellulose and about zero content of lignin in the algal biomass result in an increased hydrolysis and fermentation efficiency. Other than biofuels, algal have application in human nutrition, animal feed, pollution control, biofertilizer, and wastewater treatment. So they are renewable source of energy, unlike other natural resources like coal, petroleum, and even nuclear fuels. Biofuels are the best way of reducing the emission of the greenhouse gases. Energy density, fossil fuels carry enough energy in a small enough space to make them very particular for a number of uses. Microalgae have very high surface productivity and they can be cultivated on a non-arable land, because microalgae are photosynthetic organisms and their use provides greenhouse mitigation benefits. They can use a diverse array of carbon sources. Most notably, it has been suggested that algae might be tied directly to carbon emitted source, where they can directly convert emission into usable fuels. This means that no carbon dioxide would be released from these settings, and thus total emission would be reduced sustainably. Microalgae can grow on fresh sea or even wastewater and can accumulate up to 60% oil per dry weight under the stressful conditions. So some disadvantages are: the drawbacks regarding algae is that biofuels produced from them tends to be less stable than biodiesel produced from the other sources. This is because the oil found in algae tends to be highly unsaturated, and unsaturated oils are more volatile, particularly at a high temperature, and thus more prone to degradation. Unlike the fertilizer requirement above, this is the problem that has a potential solution. Algae require large amount of water, nitrogen, and phosphorus to grow, so much that in fact that the production of fertilizer to meet the need of algae used to produce biofuels would produce more green gas emission that was saved by using algae based biofuels. It also means the cost of algae based biofuels is much higher than the fuels from the other sources, and currently the net energy invested into producing biofuels using algae is greater than the amount of energy that can be extracted from the fuel. So now I hand over to Vivek.
Sam, next slide. Yes, so now just moving on to the conclusion. So basically throughout our presentation, we've looked at the 3 generations of biofuels, and we saw that each generation, it provides its own set of advantages as well as disadvantages. Now, when we look at generations of biofuels, we see that through the use of these first, second, and third generations of biofuel and their production procedures, we can produce different types of biofuels, and and then a lot of the biofuels, they can be produced using either 2 or 3 of the different biofuel generation procedures. So for example, we have whether we can look at gaseous biofuels, and within gaseous biofuels we have biogas and biomethane as well as syngas. So biogas is the methane produced by the process of anaerobic digestion of organic material by anaerobes, and it can be produced either from biodegradable waste materials or by the use of energy crops which are fed into anaerobic digesters to supplement gas yields. And then we look at syngas, which is a mixture of carbon monoxide, hydrogen, and other hydrocarbons, and it's produced by partial combustion of biomass. And then we can also liquid biofuels such as ethanol, biodiesel, and bioethers. Basically, looking through the generations of biofuels that we have just seen, we can use the procedures within which are each within these different generations, and we can then go on to make these different types of biofuels. With that, I think this is our we're done on our presentation for biofuels. Thank you so much, sir.
Excellent. Really, all 3 groups have done it really marvelous job. And मुझे तो लगता है कि ज़्यादा flip classes होने चाहिए. I don't know about other faculty, but मुझे लगता है कि मैंने overall जो सीखा है उसमें जिसमें मैं expert था वो बात अलग है. But when it comes to this, even a biofuel, I think you all have covered it so beautifully, and I'm sure the whole class will agree with that, isn't it? And I'm not telling only for the heck of telling, because I'm known to tell sometimes very bad things too. So really, I'm frankly and truthfully convinced about your. So let's give a clap to this group also.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sure you all will do excellent. मेरे को थोड़ा सा डाउट था कि ये फिर भी अभी एजुकेशन तो अभी आपका काफी बाकी है, but I think this gives me a confidence that you all will definitely do well. This level of preparation जो आप लोग कर रहे हो, और एंड द प्रेजेंटेशन का जो आप लोगों ने मटेरियल कलेक्ट किया, द वे यू पुट इट इन अ lucid way, biofuels or any one of them, bioresource or the first presentation which we have gone through, I know that, like, I think this is a very good, and I'm sure this young generation is going to do much better than मैं यदि BSc में था ना, तो मेरे को बोलते थे तो हमको प्रॉपरली ढंग से स्लाइडें बनाने नहीं आती थी. At our time there was nothing like computers, but even today I see many of the PhD students, if you see, if you get a chance to sit, don't make a comment, but I think this level I have not seen, even in their DRC meeting, that is their review meetings, they don't make this well of their own work. So I think this is an excellent and a sincere appreciation from me, not just for the heck of telling it, frankly. मेरे लिए बड़ा मुश्किल होगा यदि सबको फुल मार्क देंगे तो आई एम श्योर एग्जाम, बट आई माइट डू दैट, फॉर अ चेंज आई विल टेल देम दैट जस्ट टेल मी हाउ मेनी, if there is a question from examination or department, I'll tell them that how many of your people will be able to do this level of justice to the subject. Even I have not done it, frankly speaking. I have not gone into this depth of any three of the topic which we taught. So excellent students, I think you did very well. And wherever you all are, you should always insist on a flip classes. तो दूसरी बार जो सिखाने आएगा वो जरा ज्यादा प्रिपेयर करके आएगा. एंड आस्क इन बिटवीन क्वेश्चंस व्हेन यू नो सो मच. आई थिंक इफ यू आस्क द क्वेश्चन अदर वे टू इन माय क्लास, व्हाट यू कुड हैव पुट मी ऑन टू मोर डेप्थ ऑफ एवरी सब्जेक्ट बाय आस्किंग द क्वेश्चन. बीच में क्वेश्चन पूछ लेने का तो फैकल्टी भी ज्यादा सिखाएगी. ये हमारे तुम्हारे मेरे बीच में का सीक्रेट बता रहा हूँ. सो एवरीबody when the question comes and if I can't answer your question, I will go back and prepare and come back with more details. Correct? So good, I think excellent presentation. Send me the slides, all the three groups with the name. On the first slide, put all the names. Correct? Anybody want to say anything or before we close or 3-4 minutes में?
No, sir, I don't think so.
Fine. Hey, you all are coming ever in through college? Kabhi bhi, it's next semester when it will start. That is in January. You all will come. Am I right?
Sir, we were told that it's going to be mandatory since next Monday, but the date is still tentative, so we don't know.
I don't know, because some of who are staying away, I would still not tell them to just take a flight, because last time 2 MSc students came from Kerala and then there was hardly any classes or any practical we could manage, and then they had to go back because of the second lockdown. So second lockdown aane ke scope nahi hai, but make it sure, because I have no information. So confirm the information, and then if you are in Delhi, definitely come. Many students I see around in the campus. They might be from other fraternity. I don't know there. Okay, then I think thank you very much. And I think next class, next Monday, we will see what I've not yet planned. Maybe the test, next Monday test कर लें. देवांशी, पूछ लो सबको.
Sir, I will tell you after confirming with everyone.
मेरी टेस्ट बहुत आसान होती है. But आप लोग, I believe that honestly करना तो आपको फायदा ही होगा. I will send a question paper at 10:15 on Monday. On Tuesday by 2 p.m. you have to send me by email the answer sheet, scanned answer sheet. But those who send after 2 p.m. then I will not take that. Okay? देख लो, पूछ लेना आप और बाद में मेरे को feedback दे देना, ठीक है?
Okay, sir.
Okay, bye. See you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.